Hi, in this tutorial I'm going to walk you through building a simple cube using Pentaho Analysis Services, also known as Mondrian, so that you can build analytical OLAP reports like the one you see here. I'm going to use a MySQL database as the backend, and I'm going to get started by auto-generating a model for the Pentaho User Console using the data source wizard. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go and log into Pentaho. I'm going to file new and create a new data source. I'm going to use my MySQL database as the source, and I'm going to just call this model. I'm just going to call it, Food Marts using MySQL. And I'm going to use Food Mart database, which is sitting in MySQL. I'm going to say analytical model. I'm going to pick a couple of tables so I can build out a star schema. And so I'm going to choose a couple of dimensions. I'm going to use a fact table, and then I will explain to Pentaho in the analysis services engine in Pentaho how I'm going to join those together to make the dimensions and the facts essentially the star schema. So I'm going to multi-select these, and now I'm going to tell Pentaho what my fact table is, where all the measures located. All right, there we go. Now I'm going to do the joins. So I'm going to select the IDs that join the dimensions to the fact table to make the star schema. All right, pretty straightforward. This is going to auto-generate a model for me, and I'm going to do a little bit of customization on it here within the web browser, within the UI for Pentaho. First thing I'm going to do is I want this to look like a nice set of field lists for my end users, which are business users. They don't want to see these IDs. These IDs are simply fields that I'm using for foreign keys within my data warehouse. I'm going to take those out so they don't see those on the design surface. There you go. So now they just see just the fields that they want to report on. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the format of these fields to be the way that we report on data within these sales figures. And those, of course, are going to be within currency. So I'm going to say each of these is currency. Go back and change this. We're not going to measure down to the cents. We're just going to do dollars here. So I'll set each of these. All right, that looks good. I could create custom measures in there too if I wanted to. And what I'm going to do here in these dimensions, I'm going to give them friendlier names. The idea of a business intelligence solution here is to have something that business users are going to use, and they may not even know what DIM stands for. So let's just make these something that's user-friendly for the end user. There we go. Now we got a model. Now you see this URL here. I'm going to give you some more description of this in the blog post, but what that's going to do is that's going to actually use the REST API within Pentaho. It's going to give me an XML file that is going to be the output of that model, so I can now do some advanced editing on that. What I have already I could use. I could definitely use that as it is. But I'm going to take this XML file, which is a Mondrian schema for the Pentaho Analysis Services engine. I'm going to take that and I'm going to do some advanced editing on it in the Pentaho schema workbench. So let's open this guy up, and let me give some friendly names to the schema. There we go. And I'll give a friendly name to the cube within the schema. I just have this one simple cube. This is a pretty straightforward example. And I'm hooking up to MySQL, and when I'm here in Schema Workbench, let me actually make sure I get the name. It's the way that I want to come on here. Okay, there we go. Looks good. And you'll see the red check marks that show up on there. When you see that, you'll want to just go through and make sure that all the tables are selected just the way you want it for the primary source of the facts and dimensions. What I'm doing here is I'm deleting all of the pre-built dimension hierarchies and levels that the auto modeler put in there for me. I'm not going to use those. I'm going to make my own. All right, so I'm going to start building out hierarchies. The hierarchies and levels are what are going to be used by the users when they build the reports to put the different attributes onto the reports and different entities that make up your business model here. All right, so we just need to pick the right tables and then the fields that make up the dimensions for this model. And I just have one hierarchy here for customers. I'm just going to call it default. And my single level here is just going to be the, actually I'm going to do a couple of levels here so we can do we'll enable some drill down in there. You're going to pick the source columns in the MySQL database. And there we go. All right, so that takes care of that. We see all the red check marks are gone, so we're looking good on this one so far. Now let's move on to products. Do the same thing. Let's build the hierarchy. I'm only going to do one for the simple sample example, just one single hierarchy. I know that I'm only going to have one, so we'll just call it defaults. And now we need to add levels to that. the table. And we're going to have two levels. So we can have drill down here. We're going to have product line. And then the product name. All right, the red check marks are gone, looking good. Now, you notice for the time dimension, what I do is I call it calendars. That's just a convention that I use, just what I've always done when I've built BI solutions. And we're going to add a table to this. And I'm going to call this calendar 1 because I know that in BI solutions, I'm going to have more than one calendar because different groups and different folks who report on OLAP analytical reporting are going to use different calendars for their reporting. So I'm just going to call this calendar 1, knowing that I'll come back and do more later. Now, one thing you're going to want to do here is you'll see we do this is I will call this as a time dimension instead of a standard dimension so that we can do time analysis with this dimension. And so I will then define the levels as different parts of a calendar and a time dimension as well. So that's going to be in your dimension type is where you will make that change here. You can define this as well in the data source wizard from the Pentaho User Console browser if you'd rather. I like to do these kinds of things here in Schema Workbench just because I think that it's it's an offline kind of mode where I can work with this XML file that we downloaded through the API. When I'm done with all this, I'm just going to save this off and then publish this back to the server. So let's go ahead and save it. And when you save it, one thing I want you to see here too is that when you save it, it will use the name of the file, and it'll say that file already exists, and that's okay because we are overwriting what we did from the data source wizard from the auto modeling. And so once we've got that, we publish this to the server, and that's going to make it available for all of our users to report on for our BI solution. All right, great, so we're ready to go. Let's make some of those reports to look like what I showed you at the beginning. Now when we log in, we will see our schema and our cube that we just generated. And there it is, using the names, the friendly names that we gave in Schema Workbench. All right, so here's your design surface for the table view of your cube. And you see the formatting worked, and we got the aggregation of the sum for that field. We can just take those, drop it off, and we can try a different measure just to make sure. There you go. You see the different levels of our hierarchies over here on the design surface as well, under the different names, the default hierarchy and the calendar 1 hierarchies. And you see the data is, in fact, slicing the way that we want it to. And we can get some subgroupings in there, some groups, different group by, depending on the different dimensions that we decide to slice and dice by on that. And you'll find too, in this case, this was a very simple cube. There's probably some things that don't have any value that's appropriate for that specific context. So we just take that off. And you can go over here on Analyzer and you can switch this to a different design, different graphs. One that's going to make sense for your data. None knows well. Maybe a pie would be more appropriate for this one. Yep, well, that's pretty much exactly half and half. But anyway, that gives you the overall idea of what it takes to put together a model and a cube for a semantic model and a business model using Pentaho. So I hope that you have found this useful.